Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're looking at another Stirlingkit steam engine. Now, in the past here with the show, Stirlingkit has been very generous with their products, providing them here for the show for us to check out and play with, and I have enjoyed every single one of them. To date, we've already done two steam engines. First, there was this one here that they sent me, a basic engine that was a load of fun to assemble and get running, and then they upped the ante just a little bit with this one here with an included little generator that runs a street light, kind of an added little bonus with it. But they've come up with a new design of a steam engine. It looks a little more modern, I guess, at least in my mind it does, and we are going to play with that one today. So let's head over to the bench. We're going to look at what comes in the kit, we're going to assemble it, and we're going to see if we can't get this thing running. Well, this is the kit as it was sent to me, and we're just going to have a look here at what's included inside this box. Now, according to the picture here on the manual, this is a much more compact unit. So I'm not exactly sure how we're going to put this together or what we're going to do. But let me get this unpackaged and have a look at the materials that are provided. And we'll go from there with the assembly of the steam engine. Well, I've got everything unpacked here, and the first thing that I notice about this entire kit is, for starters, everything is solid metal. This is all solid brass with nice stainless steel or aluminum inserts. The flywheel here, which I'm assuming that's what this is a lot smaller than was on the previous models. I also noticed that the boiler is not that polished brass like we had on the other boilers, but it also isn't a focal point of a display in the model, because that will eventually get covered over with our housing compartment here. So I'm excited to get this put together. Let's get on with this and get on with step one, and that will be the assembly of the crankshaft base. Well, before I get started on the crankshaft base, I just want to say I took all these parts out of their foam protection, and I was a little overzealous and anxious and excited to get the model started, but leave them in the packaging. And the reason being is that the manual is set up in such a way that the diagrams coincide with the layout of your foam packaging to give you the numbers of the parts. So I've put everything back here into the foam just to make it a little easier to pick and choose the parts that I need. Okay, so let's get started with this assembly. Now, the diagrams that are provided in the manual are extremely clear as to what you need to do and how you want to align the pieces. So paying attention to the diagrams and the instructions, we can just install this crankshaft base together. Now, this also comes with all the tools that you will need in order to assemble this engine. Okay, and before we tighten these down, we just want to turn this manually by hand just to make sure that it operates smoothly. And if we're happy with how this is operating, we can tighten down the 4 bolts that we just installed. Well, for the next step, I have gathered together all of the pieces that we need for the assembly of the piston. Now, guys, I just want to point out something. If you're not sure about the pieces or of which ones to gather together, it's very easy to figure out. There is a chart right here, and each one of these numbers in this chart coincide with the numbers on the bags. And you can see here that it's listed the part numbers. So if you're confused and you can't find a certain part for a certain piece that you need, you can reference this page and see exactly what bag it's in, what it looks like, and see the number of it right there. So I'm going to carry on. We can get this piston assembled, and then we can carry on. Well, at this point in time, I'm going to assemble the cylinder and the bracket as well as the reversing system and end up putting all of that together in one unit. Guys, there are a couple of areas here that it shows in the instructions where you want to add thread locker. Now, I don't see any thread locker included in the kit, so this is something you want to keep in mind. You will need to add some thread locker to these as they're moving parts and can loosen the threads. As well, there are places where you're going to need lubricating oil. And for that, I'm just going to use some 3-in-1 motor oil, some light SAE 20. This is just a very light blend, kind of like sewing machine oil, just a very light lubrication. And you will need to add that as well in the areas where this instructions state to do so. Well, with these pieces done, we now need to put the whole assembly together. Guys, this video would be an hour and a half long if I go through all the steps and all of the procedures of assembling the engine parts and the piston. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this assembled. I'm going to get that put together. I'm going to finish the whole engine assembly here, and then I'm going to see you when we need to start attaching and assembling the boiler. And that would be the engine itself pretty much done. Guys, this took a lot longer than what I actually anticipated it ever to take. A lot of finicky small parts that you really have to pay attention to what you're doing, pay attention to the instructions. Not difficult, just you really got to pay attention to what's happening. But it was a load of fun to assemble this thing, and it looks great. Now, I'm not going to lie, there are some screws here that are so tiny. I actually had to end up using a magnifier to be able to see them. But I did get them in the end, and that was for this little nameplate right here. But those screws are tiny. Without a magnifier, I don't think that I personally could have accomplished getting them put in place. So at this point now, we need to move on to the boiler and the base. Now, the boiler and the base is very similar to the assembly of the rest of the project. All of the pieces are numbered in the instructions. All of the pieces are labeled on the listings as far as what is in what bag. Very easy to figure out as long as you take your time and pay attention to the numbers. Now, the housing, the outer housing of the steam engine looks like it's pretty much all encompassing. It holds the boiler itself as well as the controls. It holds pretty much everything in order for you to get this to work. So we will continue getting this entire boiler put together. There's not many steps left here. The boiler starts at step 13 and it actually ends a little further in the instructions at step 16. So technically only 3 steps left to do. Okay, so I'm going to carry on here with getting this boiler assembled. And then I guess really the last thing that we need to do here is we need to get the boiler and the engine attached to the base plate. So let's have a look at that. Now the engine and the boiler attached very easily to the base plate with 8 bolts. 4 in the engine, 4 in the actual boiler itself, and then you need to attach the little rubber feet that keep it from sliding around as well. Pretty simple operation, and once we get that done, I guess we can take this for a test spin. And there we have our finished steam engine with the boiler and the engine all intact and attached to the base. Now, guys, this is a very compact engine, and if we compare it to the engines that I've shown you guys previously here on the show, the design itself is a much more compact design. The engine is much smaller. The boiler is actually contained and concealed within the housing for the boiler. So we don't have that polished boiler that's out in the open. But one of the biggest and most significant differences between the older style of these two here, the first one that was sent out and then the second one that was sent out with the street light, aside from the fact that the flywheel on these other ones is much larger than what the flywheel is on this new style, the biggest difference that I can see, and one of the things that I like so far, even though I haven't put it to the test yet, is the actual burner. So I just want to take a second to look at the difference between the two burners, the older style and the new. Now with the older style burner, we have this completely contained reservoir that holds your rubbing alcohol, and the burners are like a coiled steel mesh that is held here in place in this kind of retaining ring, and that all sits down inside of here and goes inside, and you light the top of this mesh. Now we can see it's a little wobbly, but it still gives a good flame. But I did find that the flame was a little inconsistent. This one here sticks out a little more, so the flame might be a little higher. This flame might be a little lower. So we get a little bit of inconsistency with that, and that of course creates this charring that we've seen on the boilers in the previous designs. This new style boiler is completely contained in its housing. So even if there is some charring, you won't see it. And the boiler itself is not that polished brass, but the burner, this is a huge difference. The entire burner is completely 100% a sealed unit. There is no coils, this entire steel mesh across this entire opening, and these smaller sections here, these smaller holes, this is what will produce the flames that will heat the boiler. So I am expecting a much more consistent flame with this. Before we get into firing up the burners and getting the boiler running and getting this engine spinning, I just want to show you a comparison here, kind of side by side, of the difference between the old style burner that was included with the two previous steam engines that we did here on the show and this new style. We're just looking at flame stability. So I'm just going to light the old one here first. And we can see that the flames, they both have kind of different heights, but there's not much flame there. There's not a lot of basically fire surface to get that water to come to a full boil. But let's have a look at this new one here and just see what we've got. That is a massive difference in flame surface to cover the length of the boiler. And it'll go a long way to helping the boiler stay under pressure. So just a little comparison here between the old style and the new style. And while you can just blow this old style out, this one here is a little more robust as far as the flame goes. So if you want to put this one out, you're better off with some kind of a piece of metal. I just have this lying around the shop, and just lay it over top, and that will smother the flame and allow it to go out. So just a little comparison between the two different styles of burners, guys. So let me get our boiler filled with some distilled water. I will get our burner filled with some rubbing alcohol, and we are going to take this for a test spin and see if we cannot get our engine running. And now with that inserted, we just wait for the pressure to build up in the boiler. Well, the water in the boiler is heating up, and I'm just watching the pressure gauge here from the tank. Right now we're just starting to raise. We're about 0.5 kilogram per centimeter square, per square centimeter of pressure in the tank. Once it gets up to 2, we're going to open up our valve here. Guys, use tweezers of some kind because that valve gets hot, and that will allow the pressure to come through our piping here and into our chamber, through into our engine, and then we will spin this flywheel and see if we can get the engine to run. It is still burning though. We are still heating up in the boiler itself. So we do have a little bit of a wait because we're still waiting for the pressure to build in that tank. Well, we are there just over 2. So let's give it a try. I'm going to open the steam valve. Well, I ran it too full and we lost our pressure. I went down below 1 on the pressure of the tank because I had the valve open too far and we stopped running. So I've closed this valve. We're going to allow the pressure to build up and let's see if we can start it up again. But that was really cool. That thing really fired up great. That's fantastic. Very cool stuff. And there you have it. The latest steam engine kit by Stirlingkit. Guys, any child that loves trains would be fascinated by one of these kits, whether it be the older ones that I've done here on the show or this newer one that they've come up with. I love the style of this newer one, the more compact version. The main thing here is aesthetics as far as I am concerned. With the older ones, that polished brass boiler, you get the black charring from the alcohol burners. It's inevitable. It happens. I have seen it on every single steam engine kit from the early days when I was a kid right up until now. Those black charring marks are absolutely unavoidable. It just happens, but they do wipe off rather easily and rather cleanly. This one here, you've got none of that. It's all contained inside of that black housing. And it looks great. It's a great design. It really is. The one thing I found with this kit, and I'm going to have to play with it a bit to see if it's user error or whatever, is that you've really got to juggle around with the amount that that valve is open and the amount of pressure that's built up on the inside of your boiler. If you drop down below or too far below that 2 kilograms per square centimeter pressure level, you don't have enough pressure to run the motor and the motor will peter out and die down. So you need to keep that pressure up, and it's a very, very fine balance between adjusting that pressure release valve on the top to get the pressure to go through to your engine and having it too far open or too far closed, because too far open allows the motor to go like heck, but you lose your steam rather quickly. Having it too far closed does not allow enough steam from the boiler to come through the tubing to get to the engine to make it run. So you've got to find that kind of right in between balance. And that takes time to play with it. And it's more time than I'm going to do dealing with it here today on the show. I'm going to do that later on. In fact, I'll probably do it with my granddaughter and let her have some fun with it too. But guys, don't think that if it's not running for like an hour, for starters, it won't do that. But if it's not running for an hour, I did something wrong. Well, you probably did. And it's that fine balance between steam release and steam retention inside the boiler. You got to find that happy medium right in between. The other thing I will point out is Pay very, very close attention. Very close attention. I can't say this enough to your assembly. This assembly of this steam engine took way longer than I ever thought it was going to. It's not a complaint. I enjoyed every minute of it. I had a lot of fun building this engine. The parts are very small. I had to use magnification in some cases, but the assembly of it was fun. It was enjoyable. It's technical without being too difficult, and you actually feel like you're accomplishing something as you're building the kit. However, if you do something foolish, like, oh, I don't know, build the piston backwards, it isn't going to work. It isn't going to run. It's not going to do anything. You have to make sure that you're following the directions. And as for me, I made that one mistake. That piston block on the cam, I accidentally or inadvertently installed it upside down, which meant that when the piston was doing its job, going in and out of the piston shaft, it was actually protruding too far out of the piston shaft. It hit the top cap and jammed. It won't allow it to do a full rotation. I had to take the entire model apart and rebuild it. Guys, I'm not going to get into what a pain in the neck that is. So pay attention to your assembly and you won't have that problem. But I also have to say that troubleshooting it and having that kind of fun, that was enjoyable for me too. That's right in my wheelhouse. That's the kind of stuff I love to do. So either way, a fun kit, works really well. Love the new burner. I love the look and the new style. I love that red aluminum base. It gives it so much character, you know, against the black of the housing of the boiler. The whole kit looks great. You know, I had a great time. I really did with it. And I hope you guys will look into this kit if this is something that interests you. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. It's been a lot of fun for me. I want to thank Stirlingkit for sending this out. Once again, very generous with their products and their kits here on A Cut Above Woodworkings. They've been exceptional, and I really want to thank them for sending this out. This has been a fun one. Guys, I'm going to post all the links to this down below, as well as the links for the other steam engines that we did on the show. If you're interested in, say, the first one we did, you can just click right up here in the top corner. If you want to see the second one, you know what? You do the same thing. It's right here. You just check it out. You can click right there and it'll lead you right to it. But I'm going to put all the product links down below. If you haven't already found any part of today's show interesting, likable, enjoyable, entertaining, informative, why not like and subscribe to the channel? Guys, we have a phenomenal audience base here, and I'm hoping that you're seriously going to consider becoming a part of that. I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you've enjoyed the steam engine. You're going to look into one for yourself. Christmas is just around the corner. And guys, more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.